Hello everyone, welcome back to Doodling Through Education. Today for my CC students, it's Cycle 3, Week 7, and that just means that today we're going to be talking about the Monroe Doctrine. So this is a history episode. I also wanted to remind you that if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. So, on that note, let's start doodling. In the early 1820s, many of the Latin American countries were newly independent from countries like Spain and Portugal. But this created some unease for both the United States and Britain. They were concerned that it was possible that powers in Europe may try to colonize the area again if given the chance. Britain made a proposition to the United States and asked them if they wanted to join forces to try to combat this if the event were to arise. John Quincy Adams famously argued that it could be detrimental to the United States to join forces with Britain and could limit opportunities in the future for the United States to expand, and it may also leave the United States vulnerable to Britain in the case that they wanted to try and expand back into the United States. The current president at the time, James Monroe, agreed with this. This new idea created the need to proclaim this position that the United States had in the Western Hemisphere. So Monroe and Adams got busy drafting a message to communicate that the Old World and the New World were fundamentally different and should be two different spheres of influence. The United States did not want to interfere in the political affairs of Europe or with existing European colonies, and they believed that the European countries should not become involved in the affairs in the Western Hemisphere. On December 2nd, 1823, President Monroe addressed Congress to present these ideas. These ideas would later become known as the Monroe Doctrine. The three main concepts of the doctrine were: there should be separate spheres of influence for the Americas and Europe. Europe should not try to colonize countries in the Western Hemisphere anymore. And they should not intervene with any type of military activity in the Western Hemisphere anymore as well. This was designed to signify a clear break between the New World and Europe. This was a monumental moment in American history because this doctrine warned strongly that the United States would not tolerate any further colonization or monarchs that wanted to control them. This was the beginning of our foreign policy. By the mid-1800s, Monroe's Declaration, combined with other ideas like Manifest Destiny, provided support for U.S. expansion on the American continent. From 1870 on, after the United States grew to be more of a world power, the Monroe Doctrine was used to justify some specific interventions in Latin America on the part of the United States. In 1904, President Theodore Roosevelt claimed the U.S. government's right to intervene to stop European creditors who were threatening armed intervention in order to collect debts in Latin American countries. Roosevelt's interpretation of the Monroe Doctrine, he believed, justified these military interventions in Central America and the Caribbean, as well as the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Cuba. This intervention, unfortunately, was generally viewed by Latin America as aggressive and created a strained relationship with our neighbors to the south for many years. During the Cold War era, President John F. Kennedy invoked the Monroe Doctrine during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, when he ordered a naval and air quarantine of Cuba after the Soviet Union began building missile launching sites there. Overall, today we have reduced greatly any military involvement in regions that are not immediately near the United States, but we still hold a very strong influence on the foreign policies in the Western Hemisphere. And that's all we have for today. Be sure to talk with your parents, talk with your siblings. As always, keep learning about the Monroe Doctrine and maybe some other events in our history that use the Monroe Doctrine to justify them. So research it a little bit with your family and with your parents specifically. Chat about this and how this doctrine really affected the history of our country. So remember to be kind, follow God's will, and take care. Bye.